memories.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Are we live? We're live. Okay. Welcome to the Transition Committee meeting on May 30th. Now, oh, the year is flying.
Believe it.
My name is Ornella Parker. I am one of the co-chairs for the board.
Joanne Brown, co-chair.
What we're gonna do is we'll do a quick whip around. If you just say your name and affiliation to the board and the committee, and we'll keep it moving.
So, good evening, folks. Carl Henry Cesar, chairperson and board member.
Liz Denny's, or Elizabeth, I am also a board member.
Erica Phillips Jones, new board member.
Tova Zenberg, a new board member.
I'm Alex Lessman, also a new board member.
Gerald Gray, a new board member.
Sean Campbell, district manager, the new board members. Tied, it's a tie.
Hey.
And just for clarity's sake, for the new board members, this is an ad hoc committee of the board. And Joanne and Ornella are the co-chairs of that, and Carl is the chair of the whole board. And over the summer, you'll be getting committee preference forms and you'll be on a standing committee. But welcome, it's really nice to meet all of you in person again and for the first time. And Patricia.
Hi. So we're gonna actually jump into the agenda items. One of the main talking points and discussion piece for today is the state of the board report. You guys should have received an email with the PowerPoint.
No, the PowerPoint didn't get distributed.
JK, you're gonna see the PowerPoint right now. So we're gonna jump into that so we can jump into the state of business for this meeting.
Okay, I'll be doing the presentation. How many people are new? I see you mentioned that you were new. Welcome. This committee was formed prior to you joining the board, and if you would like to be part of this committee as an additional committee on top of your standing committee, you're welcome to join. Just let the board office know that you're interested. And then one other piece of advice that was given to me when I joined this board was that all of the action happens in committee. So you'll be expected to go to your standing committee, the one that you're assigned to, but all of the action happens in these groups. The general board meetings are where we sort of resolve the issues from those committees. So
Okay.
I encourage you. It was the best advice I got when I joined the board.
I would like to be a.
Okay, so what we did was we took the relevant information of all the board members, including the new members, and we created this presentation to sort of give you a state of the board report. So this committee was tasked to both look at the state of the board in the light of term limits. That's the spring mandate. And then in the fall, there'll be some presentations from some of the more long-standing members who it will basically be like, you know, referring institutional knowledge to you. A lot of stuff has gone on throughout the years in the district, and you should know about that. So when you're making new decisions, you'll have that background.
Can I interrupt to ask you to back up even further and talk about term limits are a new thing that haven't kicked in yet in the charter revision, like introduce why we have to do this?
So I believe it was it 2018 or 2019? The city charter was amended. It was a vote throughout New York City. Previously, community board members served for as long as they wished, so long as they followed the rules and were productive members of community boards. And as you'll see, we do have some very, very long-standing members. So through that referendum, term limits were set as 8 years. And then you will not be reappointed. You do have the option to, after your 8 years, to leave for 2 and then reapply. So what this PowerPoint does is going to look at what do we look like when 2027 happens and 2028 happens. So first slide. Okay. So looking at 21, 22, 23, 24, this axis, you have the number of members and then you have the years going across. In 2021, we had 3 member appointments. In 2022, we had 8 member appointments, but this graph shows how many are still active on the board. So 4 are active from 2022, 10 are active from 2023, and 11 are active from 2024. So that's how many were appointed per year. So 20% of the board in 2023 was a new member, and in 2024, 22% of the board was a new member. Next slide. Yeah, question? Yes,
Sorry, what's the total number of members of the board?
it's 50.
50?
Right now, 49, there should be hopefully another appointment to fill that. space.
So every year there should be 25 appointed. They're staggered 2-year terms. So technically, every year 25 terms expire, 25 people get reappointed. It varies a little bit because there's midterm drop-offs, stuff like that. So those numbers were the new members of the 25.
So this slide shows member term limits by year. So we're looking from 27, 28, 29, all the way to 32. So in 2027, which is the first year that term limits will be applied, we'll have 11 members that will be leaving. In 2028, same thing, 11 members will be leaving. Based on if things were to stay the same, right? That's if nobody were to leave and everything stayed the same. So these numbers will vary a little bit, but it gives you an idea. 2029, 3, 30 is 4. And then because we had, remember in the last slide, we had those big numbers of appointments in 23 and 24. That will be 10 and 11 respectively, just like in the first slide. So in 2027, 22% of the board will transition out. And in 2028, 22% of the board will transition out.
Just for context for that too, you, the incoming board members this year, you are all also a class of 11 new appointees.
So regional committees, so this board is unique in the fact that we have divided up the district into 4 regions, and this is so that we.
Because we needed there to be.
Nominating committee.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the nominating committee every year is appointed by the chair and is 1 person from each region and then a person at large. And those 4 people will make a recommendation to the board on what the slate will look like for the executive committee, which includes the chair, the vice chairs, the members at large, secretary. So just to give you a sense of where we exist geologically, each little pinpoint is a member.
I have a question about this. Have we ever considered redrawing the lines as population is much denser in the top part of the district and kind of more towards the east?
I believe in 2021, we did redraw the lines to do just that. So
Well, just didn't know if they've changed over time based on things.
it is also a bylaw. So you would need to have an ad hoc bylaw committee formed to make these small changes. But we did do that in 2021 to try to balance out the population in each of the sections. So right now, since then, it's gotten a little heavier in Region 2 than it was prior. Before this year, it was pretty even except for Region 4, which has always been a little bit sparse.
Is it divided by zip codes? Is that how the regions are divided or?
No,
Oh.
no, but I put the zip code so we can also get a sense of like where those zip codes exist
Okay.
in the district. Next slide. So to correlate, this is member term limits by regional committee. So in 2027, Region 1 will lose 4, Region 2 will lose 2, so on and so forth. And then you can see that across. So most notably in 2027 and 2028, we have heavy losses about, from Region 1 and Region 3. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a snapshot of the length of service for those who are term limited in 2025. And so this is specifically those who are up for reappointment in 2012. I'm sorry, term limit 2027. These are specifically the people that would be reapplying next year. Okay, so 5 of those members have 15 plus years experience. 2, 12 years, 1, 10, 8, 6. And so again, total number is 11. 50% of the board, the members leaving in 2027 have been on the board for greater than 15 years. And so I just put a little key fact that retention in 2025, at that, if their applications are submitted for reappointment, that it might be important for the borough president to consider this, to consider allowing them those 2 extra years until their term limited in 2027 to continue to pass down institutional knowledge and to mentor new members. Next slide. Same thing, this is for those that are term limited in 2028. And this is what it looks like for those who would be reapplying in 2026. So adjusted for that additional year, you have 3 that have 16 plus years of experience, 14, 12, 10, 8. And you can see the total is 11. So 27% of members leaving in 2027 have been on the board for greater than 16 years. Next slide. So this is a projection. It's a snapshot of member length of service after the 2027 appointments. So it would be after those that were term limited in 2027 leave, and considering that those 11 positions would be refilled by the borough president's office. So remaining would be 5 members with 15 years experience, and going all the way down to 5 years would be 4 members. So 16% of members will have 10 plus experience years on the board in 2027 after the reappointments. And at that point, 64% of members will have less than or equal to 4 years of board member service. Any questions? Next slide. So same projection, but this is for 2028. After May of 2028, we can expect that 3 members will have 7 years experience, 4, 6 years experience, 10 with 5, and then 11 across the board for 4, 2 and 1, and 0 years. So 0 years would be the new appointees coming in. So 30% of members will have 5+ years of work service in 2028. Next slide. So in summary, between 2023 and 2024, the board received 21 or 42% new members with no previous length of service. During the first 2 years term limits, the board will receive 22 or 44% new members. By May 2028, the median length of service will be about 4 years. And just to look at the regions one more time, by May 2028, regions will experience the following losses. Region 1, 8 members, Region 3, 6 members, Region 4, 5 members, and Region 2, 3 members. And that's all I have. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Next slide.
Next slide. So just some considerations after looking at the data. And this is up for discussion. Members who are up for reappointment in 2025 and 2026 should reapply if they so wish to continue to serve and pass institutional knowledge. Or a fraction of term limited could voluntarily leave in 2025, 2026 and reapply 2027, 2028 with the hopes to return to the board with previous institutional knowledge. Based on recent appointments in 2023 and 2024, which is 42% of membership, the Office of the Borough President should consider reappointing 2027 and 2028 term limited members in 25 and 26 respectively. And then lastly, a detailed summary of these findings should be sent to the Borough President prior to the 2025 application closing in an effort to ensure that regions, racial and ethnic identity, and gender identity remain appropriately represented. And that's all I got.
Yeah. So that was a lot of numbers and a lot of information, but obviously very important for the conversation we're having. So wanted to open up the floor for any questions that anyone have or any thoughts that you guys want to share.
Why did they feel the need to put the term limits in? Like, was something not going right? Like,
I think there was a group of vocal public members that felt that if you have members with no term limits, then the opportunity for them to serve gets smaller. So it was about, adding new people and new voices and new opinions.
I guess one question I have is why, if we are if we're saying that people should continue to be reappointed, I guess like it sounds from this presentation that the ideal from perhaps the perspective of some who put this together is that people who would get term limited out in 2027 and 2028 should all be reappointed unless they want to start leaving, but it seems like that's gonna cause the bigger turnover once term limits start, as opposed to having some, trying to plan for some more people, like a smoother transition in this. Like, I think part of the issue of why this transition isn't smooth is just the nature of term limits not phasing in over more years. And instead, hitting this cliff at 2 years, but like this kind of creates a situation where if people stay their whole time, I'm kind of back off my hand, like there's a couple years where there's not a lot of new people reappointed, and then there's a few years where there's gonna be a lot of people hitting their term limits, as opposed to, and I'm not saying that any individual board member doesn't, like, I think everyone's, perspective is really valuable, and especially a lot of the longer term knowledge, but I guess to me, thinking about this as someone who will get term limited a little later, that not in the first round, kind of, but in 2030, I'm kind of thinking about how there's gonna be a lot fewer people getting term, like, wouldn't we rather have kind of a consistent amount of people getting term limited as much as we can, going forward? Like, this only talks about the first, 2 years of kind of term limits, and doesn't talk about how if we have everyone get reappointed for that, then once, there's 11 members reappointed in 2027 or through 2027 and 11 through 2028, that's just gonna continue that large turnover every year.
I have to run the numbers to see what the average length of service would look like if people from 2025 and 2026 weren't reappointed.
Yeah, I'm not saying that like everyone should, or, just like, I'm just like, it feels like the clip is
Board
just.
members who have suggested that they might step off for a couple of years so that they can reapply a couple years later and start their 8-year stint from scratch. So that's something that people are considering on an individual basis, and I don't see this as an advocacy, like a position. This is not a
Okay,
position
this just kind of reads a little,
It's just-
sorry, that's fine.
it's just descriptive, it's supposed to be descriptive data. All right, this is what is going to happen if things stay the same, but that's a big if too. There might be board members who don't make attendance requirements. I mean.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know there's a lot of
There's
other
already
things
been
outside
a board
the
member
perfect scenario.
recently appointed who's decided that she was overeager and doesn't really have the time to do it. So there's already a vacancy from the new class. So, and then to answer your question about the distribution of people according to population density, that's sort of taken care of by Department of City Planning that identifies the number of nominees each overlapping city council member has.
Yeah.
And according to the population density and the number of land that they overlap with, that's how that's kind of.
Right, I just was wondering if we have a process for updating our regions, I don't know that they need to be like it's close, but just, that's a point of question. I guess my other question too is just, like, what other things can we do to, whether people voluntarily leave or not, because it's also possible that anyone who voluntarily leaves for 2 years might never get reappointed again, because maybe the borough president, or whoever, just looks at it and is like, hey, these people have been on a run for 15 years, they did great service, but I want new voices in. How do we like make sure that, like, what are we doing kind of now to pass on this knowledge? Because I think that there's been a lot of knowledge that, I've learned through like asking questions at board meetings. But I'm sure that there's things that just haven't been on the docket at, whatever board meeting, and maybe we're on the docket, 10 years ago or something, and there's history from it. Like, how do we, I guess just like, as a board member who's been here for 2 years, like, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I just don't know about or know other people's perspectives on, and would like love to get to have, regardless of what this happens, and just.
That's the fall session of this,
Okay.
that sort of like storytelling.
Cool.
Information sharing.
Yeah.
Sorry, just to complete that, it's like a training series or something that we.
I wouldn't say training, it would be more like, maybe we get board member Glenn Wallen here to talk about the upzoning, downzoning of the district.
Bring a Powell on back.
Bring Ed Powell.
Bringing certain people back to help just fill in some of the history, the story, the gaps there.
And one of the other concepts of this committee is that we don't have a mechanism for public board members, but we have a mechanism for public committee members.
Yes.
So we can ask Ed Powell to be a public member of this committee, or Glenn decided to leave, or if board member Gail Smith decided to leave. So we can talk about, you know, if when we wrap up tonight, we can talk about some of the things that you've heard of, but you don't know enough about, like the upzoning, downzoning. There's a MIH ZQA, which started all of the affordable housing. So those are things that you can throw at us and we can find people to tell those stories.
I think too, encouraging people, you know, we have it in our bylaws that people can become public members of committees, but I don't know, we could try to be more, we could do more outreach, or just one-on-one conversations with people who've showed up to a couple meetings. Hey, you've shown up to a couple meetings. Having fun? Want to join? You know, so we can try to develop, experience. Yeah.
What does it entail to become a public member?
Not a whole lot. You have to come to a couple of committee meetings, then make a request to the board, and then the co-chairs, if they have that space on their committee, ask the chair if they can offer the invitation and, you know, we've only had a couple instances of this, but it was all.
I was
easy
gonna say,
peasy.
I was a public committee member for a while, but that was because someone had reached out to me about it. I didn't really know that was an option. So, just because they noticed that I had been coming for many, many years to it, and I just wonder if there's a way we can
Note to
advertise that better.
selves, chair, say that, you know, this should be something that we, you know, speak about publicly more often and put into our newsletter and things like that. Do you want to do another round of introductions at some point? Since we-
Yeah. We'll take the one question and then we'll go over ground.
Oh, you can go in.
No, go ahead. Okay. Hi, my name is Susan. I'm a new board member. And tailing off what you had just said, my thoughts in looking at this was not only institutional knowledge, but also I know I would want to share if I had been a board member for over 10 years. I would want to inform the new people on how it is to be on a community board itself. I'm sure new members, I know myself, might not realize that, oh, when you contact this organization, it's going to take actually 3 years, and then we've got to go around to the next round. But the 4th year, we actually made headway. That type of information is really quite valuable. I'm just sharing that would be wonderful. If some of the older ones could share that dynamic of how the board actually gets things done with the city. Because I'm sure it takes more time than one would think. And I'm sure it has a lot more pieces, moving parts than one would think. Let's do a quick reintroduction again. We had a few people join us after we started. Hi, everyone. Ornella Parker, chair of this, co-chair of this board. And I would say I'm also on the newer side of the committee. Year 2023. I'm losing track of the years at this point. That my age is telling me now. Yeah, sophomore year too. And then Joanne, you.
Joanne Brown, I'm co-chair of this committee and I've been on board since 2015. So almost 10 years, next year, 10 years.
Sean Campbell, district manager.
I'm Gerald Gray, new member.
I'm Alex Lessman, new member.
Tova Zenberg, a new member.
Sue Rock, I'm a new member.
Erica Phillips Jones, member.
Benjamin Benzet, member from 2023.
Musa, member from a couple years ago.
Liz Denny's, I've been on for 2 years.
Carl Henry Cesar, chairperson, been a member since, I think, 2019. It was a midterm appointment. And,
Yeah.
yes.
Remember the day.
Yeah, it was a special, special story.
It is.
I did want to make sure I gave space for anyone else who had any questions or comments.
So I'm just curious, so the 8-year term limit is starting from when this law was, when the referendum was passed?
People were grandfathered in. That's why those first 2 years, it's a bigger bar than in the following years, except, you know, look, what is it, 2027, 11 will be turned off? But this year, 11 new members were like, we've already done this. We've already done 11. So, you know, it might not be such a big, shock. But it is. So the clock started ticking in 2018 or 19.
Okay.
And that's why the people who are term limited off in 2027 will be the people who were appointed 8 years ago and everybody else appointed prior to those 8 years.
Unless you're reappointment is the following year.
And then it's, yeah,
Right,
same
so
story. for the-
it always falls on when your appointment year is. So I'm an odd year, 25, 27, and then like, but some of the other members, as you saw from the graphic, are 26, 28. So their appointments in 26.
Yeah, try to remember the new members that your even years, because then next year, Borough Hall will come to a meeting and be like, remember, if your term is up this year, you have to reapply. And then everybody said, my term, is it me, is me, is me. If you remember even years, you can kind of guess whether it's you or not.
I have a question about the third bullet up there. Is the suggestion there that, because those folks are gonna be terminated by 27, 28, that the borough's office should, I could start them on a new term? a year
No.
early? Yeah, maybe I'm missing something.
So, not sure everyone is aware that there was a letter from the Borough President's office asking for members with long-term service to voluntarily leave the board during this last appointment. And boy, did it create quite the stir throughout Brooklyn. And so he walked back that request somewhat and had stated, that really his office will not remove anyone, because everyone was worried that people were gonna be removed. Sorry about that, I can't put it on mute right now. The people were going to be removed, even if they had very good attendance, and so he walked it back and said, we only remove for cause, non-attendance, attendance that's less than 50 cents or 50% or less. And so not to worry. So we just, what the bullet is saying is that perhaps to consider the value of the people that are up for reappointment in 2025 and will be term limited in 2027, and that the work that they can contribute during that time in mentoring. You missed a whole bunch of slides. There was a lot of.
Do you want to talk about mentoring, like how you set up, like started the legacy member, new member, co-chair thing?
So when I became chair in 2021, I saw a lot of legacy members who were the co-chairs of committees, and we were seeing a lot of new members come in, and I saw an opportunity for there to be not only new voices, but maybe opportunity for mentorship. So we asked some of the more longstanding members to step aside during, this was at the time that we were formulating the committees, if they wouldn't mind stepping down from the co-chair position, and we bring a new member in. So we'd have a legacy member, a member with a lot of experience, and then a new member. So that's been going on for a couple of years now. I think it's been working out great. So we just continue to do that. So like, I'm a long serving member, and we have a new member. So I'm just here like, you know, she needs assistance, or, you know.
All the committees are like that now?
I think, yeah, I think maybe,
Housing isn't.
huh?
Housing isn't.
I was just gonna say, I don't think housing and land use is.
Community safety.
Yes.
On the other hand, youth services is kind of too newer. So those two were more longstanding co-chairs, and the youth services, educations and libraries
Libraries.
committee are you're the newer member, and then Eric is just 1 year
Yeah.
longer serving than you. I was gonna say older, longer serving than you.
I like older.
And that.
If there's no more questions, yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to like.
No, don't
ask a couple
apologize.
Questions. One other thing I've just been thinking about a lot with like institutional knowledge and things is just like a lot of things, you kind of catch it just at like whatever board meeting where things come up. And I just don't have a really good sense of like how good our board's attendance is overall. And of course, like I know people, this is a volunteer position and there's a lot of, people have other things in their lives. But, I was just like kind of thinking about how I've looked over some of the past minutes, and we don't usually have a full board meeting where most of the board is there. We make quorum, we barely made quorum at the last meeting. And I'm just kind of wondering if like what the barriers for members are to attend things, because I do think that the more, I feel like from my experiences, the more board meetings I've been to, the more I understand what's going on with the board, the more like knowledge and, you know, conversations, formal and informal, you know, I hear about things, and I just, you know, I'm just kind of curious if there, like, what, if my understanding is that, I reached out to the Borough President's office just to get an idea of like how much attendance there is at different board meetings, and just like not in any like, you know, just curious. And it sounds like some boards have a lot more attendance and some boards have like, are also kind of struggle to meet quorum a lot more than we do. And I was just wondering if, you know, like what kind of, you know, I guess like, even though I've only been a member for 2 years, like I've been around this board for a really long time. I was a public committee member before that and so forth. You know, so I kind of know how things are run and I know when to like look out for things on my schedule. And I was just wondering if there's like any consideration towards attendance, and towards like, what can we do to like help make sure that board members can make it to things to help pass institutional knowledge down too. I mean, it's a little bit adjacent because I think this is like a board operating question as well, but just something that I was thinking about as we were discussing these things.
We had really, really nice numbers when we were entirely remote.
Do you want to talk about the process on attendance?
So basically, Sean and I, we've had some conversations about attendance. And so one of the things that we've started redoing is, for lack of a better term, it's been like a reminder about the board meetings, right? And so for the past 2 board meetings now, there's been emails and phone calls that have gone out to the board members. And we did that precisely because not the meeting in which I became board chair, but the meeting after that, that meeting started about 7-8 minutes after the scheduled start time. And that was because that was how long it took to get quorum. And quorum was achieved while the call was being called. And we were like 1 or 2 people above quorum. The last meeting that we had, so the last meeting that we had after we had done that kind of full court press, for lack of a better term, we started, I think, maybe 3 to 5 minutes after the scheduled start time. And we had quorum when we started. And this was also the first time, exactly, this was also the first meeting where, you know, you, the new board members, also showed. So thank you for coming. And we had like, I think, maybe a third over the minimum quorum amount too, right? So to answer your question, what are we doing in terms of attendance? We're doing a full court press where we are contacting all the board members via email and phone and whatever communication they give us before that board meeting, reminding them that we do that in addition to the general email that gets sent out. To your other question about scheduling in general, that's something where, because that's like a board operation question, then that's something that could definitely be brought up between, not between, but that's something that could be brought up in an executive committee meeting, right? Just to say, hey, like, given what attendance may have looked like up to this point in time, do we think that this full court press and communication is doing its job in terms of getting the quorum numbers up? And if so, is that all that we need to do? Or if it turns out that the information shows that we're not getting that expected result from it, are there things that may need to be looked at procedurally in terms of getting the attendance up?
And can I add to that, the bylaws dictate that any member who's missed 2 meetings in a row should get a letter from the chair. Any board member who's missed 4 meetings in a season will get a letter from the chair. The letter does note that attendance could be cause for removal. And that's something that Chair Emeritus Brown and current Chair Cesar have been doing. Well, you've only had 1 opportunity to send the letter.
Yeah, I don't want to
But, and a few went out. And so, so that's sort of the warning system. And then there is a provision in the bylaws that people can be removed for non-attendance.
I guess I'm thinking more of like, you know, I think of.
We've never not made quorum.
Right,
We've never not made quorum ever in my 13 years here.
There are boards that.
yeah, no, I understand that. I guess just my comment is I feel like we're a stronger board when we are well above quorum than when we're just at quorum,
Clearly.
because we get
Clearly, that's
everyone's
that's
perspectives
pretty
and
obvious.
just trying to think about like, how do we get towards that? as much as possible. And like, you know, I guess I'm not trying to say like we're scheduling badly or something. I just, when I think of, when I've scheduled meetings and, you know, they're not working for a lot of people, sometimes it's how, and, obviously, like I'm here and I'm usually here, so.
I understand. And then, and so to tie all that stuff together too, you know, this is an action where the full court press that we're doing, this is only the second, you know, this is only 2 board meetings, you know, where we've done this, right? So that's still kind of shit window of data to see if the impact's there, right? Like the next one's gonna be June, right? Because we have our next board meeting on June 17th, right? So we're gonna do the same communication full court press where all of you will get, I mean, the email already went out regarding the June schedule, right? And some of the calendar invites are going out too, but there'll also be reminders that go out before that. But that's still a short body of work to see if we get that same result. The true test of that full court press would be, you know, basically the next year, right? Like September through June. And that will be also a chance to see if by some point in time is that full court press no longer necessary because we're getting that stuff in there, right? And then there's also the new member orientation that we're gonna have before the June 17th board meeting, right? So that's supposed to start at 6:15. So there's gonna be a few things that are covered in there, and then that's also open to current board members. And then Sean and I have regular conversations, and so this is something too that we'll be talking about too, and like, are there ways to, you know, increase and independence aside from, you know, that full compress. So yeah, like the things that you're saying, you know, yes, like we welcome the feedback, welcome the conversation, because I agree with you, like the more of us that we have here, then the better it is for us to hear people's viewpoints and considerations. Right.
I saw that there was another hand. Before we jump in, I just want to make sure a few individuals walked in after. So if you came in after and didn't get to introduce yourself, if you could just share your name and your affiliation with the board, and then we'll keep the conversation going. You want to start? Let's start here.
Hi, Carissa. You need my last name too?
Yeah.
Carissa Alfonso, I'm a new board member.
Hello.
Florence Chen, the board member.
And then I want to acknowledge Orlando Ross representing Congresswoman Yvette Clark's office. Thank you for being with us.
I just wanted to say, if it, even though COVID is over, people have a lot of busy lives here and have a lot of things going on. So is there not a way to keep it hybrid like it was before, like have it online? As well as
So there's a legal committee so Community Board 14 has a legal committee and we'll be meeting soon to discuss that because very high level, the open meetings law is what allowed the hybrid meetings to happen. And then New York City had its own order that expired. And so there's amended language in the open meetings law that was part of the past state budget. And so the Community Board 14 Legal Committee will be meeting sometime very soon. And then we will basically determine if we can keep, if it's not even if we can, I guess what we'll determine is legally, does it make sense for us for the next year to operate how we've been doing, which is that committees, we've done our committee meetings virtually, basically, right? Any public meeting has been a hybrid combination where it's been here, but we've also done that. But our board meetings have been all 100% in person, right? And so we're basically this is the end of May, so we're basically in June. So there's a bunch of committee meetings in June that will remain virtual. The board meeting for June will be in person. The public hearing for the City of Yes Housing Opportunity, that will be in person as well, but I think it's hybrid. But TBD if we're going to operate that same way next year.
I
Thanks.
just want to make sure, I mean, because you're either misspeaking or I'm mishearing. Hybrid is a very specific thing.
Oh.
A hybrid meeting is, like, this isn't hybrid. This is an in-person meeting that happens to have a live stream. But nobody who's watching it and not physically in the space can participate. In order to have a hybrid meeting, a true hybrid meeting, the law dictates that you still have to have a physical quorum. So let's just say at our board meetings, we had our physical quorum of 26 people. When we have a full complement of 50, you need half plus one. So we had our 26 people, And then, then the other people who aren't there, the board members who aren't there, have to have some sort of, I forget what the language is, do you remember, like extraordinary reason or insurmountable cause or something like that? Yeah, so like, then they have to document that. So this board decided that for the in-person, the meetings that have to be in person, whether to have them fully in person or hybrided, because the criteria were so high to do the other, the hybrid, it just made sense to make it fully in person. And that can always be revisited by board members. As far as doing a hybrid committee meeting in this space, the technology is just, what's the professional word? Help me, Orlando, what?
Antiquated,
Sure,
insufficient.
thank you. Yes, that, and underfunded.
There's a big piece to a hybrid meeting, which is the public needs to be able to assemble in a hybrid situation. So even if board members are broadcasting from their house and attending because of their extraordinary circumstances, we still need an additional public space where the public can actually be hybrid.
Okay.
And that is the big sticking point, that we can't run multiple locations during a meeting.
I just thought that it would, you'd have more participation if they had the, the
If
option
we
to
were
come
fully
on.
remote, we would also have full participation,
Yeah,
but then
you
we would
would.
be fully conflicted with the law.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I want to make sure that I'm here, that everyone sees me as well. But I wanted to share that we do use technology on a federal level to do meetings, to do town hall meetings. And one of them is, I believe, is WebEx, not WebEx, yes, WebEx. And they have a stadium seating, and there's a thing called there's a particular platform that you can broadcast to multiple social media platforms, and people can come in through Facebook and Twitter.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that will work for you guys.
Yeah,
You can use
Our
social
media
media.
feed is YouTube, and we record them and we post every single one of our meetings on the website for review.
It's called StreamYard. It's called StreamYard. That's what it is.
Do you have funding for streaming?
No, we're doing all of the free things, except for when we are in person and we are being live streamed while in person at East Midwood Jewish Center. We are paying a consultant and we're getting tech assistance, and it's not cheap. And if we then had him come to every committee meeting on top of those board meetings, it becomes heavy. So I think the goal would be to develop the technology here to do this meeting so that there was some way to pass around the speaker from, a remote speaker.
Yeah.
And then we would have to also talk about whether our presenters from city agencies, are they here in person? Are they the ones being sort of streamed in? But we continue to have the conversation. We will continue to adjust as needed.
So one of the considerations that we posed to you was to send a detailed summary of these findings to the Borough President's office prior to the 2025 reappointment period. So my recommendation would be that it be written over the summer based on the findings that we have in these slides and that kind of data. And then when we reconvene this committee in the fall, we can review the letter and then make a recommendation to the full board. But the first thing that would have to happen is to find consensus in this room as to whether or not we want to actually draft that letter. So I'm putting forth a motion to you as to whether or not we'd like to draft a report to the Borough President's office, showing them a snapshot of what the board will look like. Because he is also very concerned about transition, and both Chair Cesar and myself have told Borough Hall that this board is actively working to make sure that the transition is smooth. And I think sending a report to his office will also demonstrate that we are actively doing what we need to do. So there is a motion that I put before you, and yes.
just to clarify, the report is just mostly on the demographic of the board?
Well, we don't really have time to go through all the slides because you did miss them, but I can send you a PDF of it.
We'll post it on the website.
Okay. But what we did, would you just mind, just very quickly going through them so I could show him what some of the information looks like? We could start from the beginning.
A lot of descriptive data.
So this is member appointment by year. We get a sense of what that looks like. This is how many members are term limited by year, 20 and 28. Next slide. Looking at all of the members as per regional view. Next slide. Member term limits by regional committee. So focusing it on 27 and 28, we would lose 8 and 8. And now this is length of service. So those members that would be term limited in 2027, 5 of them have this amount of years. Same thing for 26. And then this is a projection of what the length of service would look like after the first year of term limit, which is 2027. And the same thing in 2028. So, people with 7 years, and then 30% of board members will have 5+ years of board service. So it would be exactly this, written in an executive summary to send to Borough Hall.
Thank you.
Yes.
Would it include the language on the summary slide that says, it sounds like it's recommending that all long-term board members would get reappointed in 2025?
Well, let's write it and then we can talk about it when it's written. I'm not sure what it's gonna look like. And those recommendations will come from this committee.
But aren't we writing it this summer based on this discussion right now?
Yes, and we'll edit it in the fall, right? So the letter will be given to you in draft form at the next committee meeting. And if you don't like the language or any of the recommendations that are in that letter, then you can oppose them and ask for change. And we will vote on those changes.
Okay, I just was gonna feel that that's something I would consider removing, but fine.
So you're saying that would be a sticking point to
Yeah.
seconding the motion? Okay. Well, nothing's happened with the motion yet. So for new board members, the way that it works is that the motion comes to the floor. So the motion was to draft a report that this committee will review in the fall for content. So next, what would happen is a member would second it, and then we would vote a consensus to whether or not to move forward with that action. Do I have a second for the motion? 3 seconds. All those in favor of drafting a letter for review of this by this committee in the fall, the next fall meeting? Anyone opposed? Anyone ineligible to vote? Okay.
I am. I just can't say.
All right, so we'll work on that letter and you'll receive a copy in a timely manner so that you can submit comments on it and we will discuss the next meeting. So that will be an agenda item.
So I know we wanted to circle back on what are some topics for the fall that we would like board members that have institutional knowledge to share. So some of the things that I captured while we were talking was up zoning, down zoning. And then someone also mentioned how to interactions with like city agencies, like those. So did anybody else want to share any other like topics that you would like to uplift so that as we're planning for fall, that those fall series that we had that information ready to go?
The question I have, the upzoning, downzoning, does that also include, I thought there was like an area of the community district that's like special permit? Was that part of it?
That's because, I mean, any land use, I think we can just cover zoning, sort of CD, we must have. I think it's pretty.
We have Newkirk Plaza.
Yes.
Yeah. Definitely, we should talk about that. We have, again, and we'll lump this with the downzoning, upzoning. We spent a lot of time on the MIH ZQA, that's mandatory inclusionary housing and zoning for quality affordability things. That is still active and they're going to be adding more sort of on top of that with the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity, but it would probably be a good thing to talk about so we have more context.
Anything else? Flatbush Avenue Burial Road?
Yeah, but maybe Talisha will be back.
We do anything around transportation. Thinking like, well, IBX. And I don't mean the project specifically, but the approval
rail.
process, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
That's
think that's a good
long-term.
one. Yeah.
yeah, that's really good.
IVX, another long-term
And I think
project.
I was out for like 15 years before anything.
Yeah.
That's the ground.
I was gonna say flooding, I know it's an ongoing conversation, but there's a lot of recent history that I think spans 40 some years now.
And then I like that too, because it opens the door to talk to newer and new board members about planning fellows that we've had the benefit of their hard work. So I have to do my every meeting broken record style. Please be very active with the CB14 website. Explore all of the tabs. You will see that there's projects. So you'll see something like IBX is there and the Brooklyn bus redesign. But we also have the reports of every planning fellow we posted, and they've done things, reports from speed humps to carbon neutrality and flooding and housing, and just always such smart people who did good work for us.
And the
events
YouTube
are always
channel.
up there.
Yes.
Every meeting is posted on the YouTube channel.
Our Lunch and Learn series on housing is a good primer for housing. That was done during the days of COVID and, but, you know, did some good deep dives into zoning district specific, process specific, housing specific. And then there was a Lunch and Learn series on health just this past, when was that, January? Yeah, January. So we could also talk about ideas for next year's Lunch and Learn. We can do another one. I think it's,
If you guys are interested, so the members really adamant about the AMI, about housing and making sure that it is affordable housing, but also AI and artificial intelligence. I just went to a smart cities event and it was phenomenal. So I mean, I could talk to you guys offline about it,
yeah.
but artificial intelligence in health, in education, and in nonprofits.
Sounds like a great committee presentation, perhaps.
Yes.
I know where to find you.
That's why I came.
I know you have to fight for it. It's like I had to fight for you last night.
I know there's it's ongoing, but talk about city bike and bike lanes.
We can talk about the history and the expansion of the district. Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds like somebody who might indicate transportation committee for a present reference. This is a co-chair of that committee. So.
On transportation again, I'm just thinking, again, this doesn't have to be tied into a particular project, but sometimes there's confusion caused around the like different work. So like the MTA controls like the buses or something.
Yeah.
So I control the street and
Yeah.
control the sidewalk, and there's a whole thing. I'm happy to help with some of this. I'm not just jumping on you guys. But that was, I know it was a source of confusion for me.
Sort of a governance.
Yeah, yeah.
Governance primer.
What?
Yeah. I think that we didn't lump in utilities with that and talk about the Public Service Commission and stuff like that.
You can give that presentation.
Yeah.
I don't, it's not only about the people that have been here for 10+ years.
So just to recap what I captured and give space for anyone who wants to add anything that I missed. Zoning, Newkirk Plaza, interactions with city agencies. I think we could just make that like governance of city agency in general. Flatbush Burial Ground, transportation in its entirety. Infrastructure I put under like the flooding, the planning fellows, and then we have housing. Any other topics that you guys wanted to share or that was missed?
I just want to note that when we talk about housing, I'm kind of curious if we can also just get, there was a a look back on some of the Bloomberg era rezonings, including the one initiated by Glenn, but just to kind of compare, like to think about it and how it has affected our housing stock since then as well. And just, how housing issues have changed in the city in the, past, it's about 15, 20 years now.
I had one too. I think. So we talk about board culture and bringing people back to, to kind of give some historical perspective. An idea about this board thinking forward. And one of the things that, Carol and I were talking about this the other day. Joanne and I have plenty of conversations about where this board lands on proposals that aren't district specific. Where, like, for instance, a land use thing, the city of Yes, you'll learn more in the next coming weeks. City of Yes, parts of that proposal are like smack dab right here in this district. Other things are more ancillary, or we were talking about the casino proposal. I mean, that's a Brooklyn-wide concern, but it's really, it's going to be hosted in a specific. So, to what extent does this board want to chime in on everything? To what extent does this board want to kind of have a general overview of everything, but defer to the localities more? And I don't have an answer, and this is not an advocacy, I'm not pushing for one thing or the other, but I think it's something that a body of people ought to be thoughtful about.
If I can just add something to that, the decision-making that happens with Community Board 14, right? Decisions that we make on these big things, like the City of Yes, Carl then takes to Borough Hall and votes on that board. So to have a position, to not have a position, or to defer, there still needs to be some kind of identification of what our opinion is, maybe based on neighbors and, and what's us about what they want, but because he has to bring that back for a vote.
Yeah, but you just said something that made me think, like, the difference between having an opinion and expressing our values.
Yeah.
Kind of what
Right.
you were just saying.
I just wanted to add, like, one thing that I guess, at least when I vote on sort of things like that, I try to think about how, action or inaction in other neighborhoods, like, it isn't totally isolated to their neighborhoods potentially, especially thinking about housing, and if people are pushed out of one neighborhood, then they go to somewhere where it's more affordable. And I just, I get the sense that that's sort of not normally the word culture of things, but I think that it's something important to, when we think about, like, personally speaking, when we think about how this affects our district and trying to balance that.
Yes, I feel like it's varied from topic to topic. I don't think this board has had one way of.
Oh, no, yeah, but just sometimes I've noticed that's a conflict, and I want to be mindful of it, but also make sure that we're advocating as well as we can for everyone here.
Yeah, and that's the hard part of the conversation, right? That's the challenge every time, right? Like, remembering the things that are in our district, and also at the same time remembering that there's 58 other community boards across the city that in some way, shape, or form are dealing with this stuff too. And there's those within, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, I don't know, if this is board concern, but it's a concern of mine. Seeing more of the smoke shops, and then seeing more young Black men, like, kind of, out in the streets, like walking in the streets, like in the northern section on Flatbush, and the gun violence within the northern section as well, like Regents, Ocean Avenue, Woodruff, and areas like that. And I don't know if it's something that we've ever addressed, but it's something that happens. Not as frequently, I must say, thank God. However, it's an issue, and the uptick in hard drugs now on Woodruff. I know Dwayne used to talk about that, but it's something that is like, it's growing and it's getting worse.
Well, I live right around the corner from Woodruff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I agree with that, and I'm in agreement with you with the smoke shops. There's just too many in my area to count.
Yeah.
And I just want to know what's in place? How do they get
Just
granted to
get-
have those, that many smoke shops in that community? Like
You need to get
over
specific
there
addresses
where-
to this.
Yeah, it's terrible.
You send specific addresses to this office. I just did 3 today. I send that off to OCM Enforcement, Office of Cannabis Management Enforcement. That's the state agency. They just got funded at a higher big tick up. Then some of that funding came down to the city, and the mayor announced his initiative. I forget the name of that. So, and I'm hearing that in Ridgewood and in Bay Ridge, there's been some closures that have been sticking. I sent 3 into OCM, the sheriff's office, which also has a task force on this, the precinct, which is not supposed to be precinct isn't first responder on this, but they do, like, still underage stuff like that. Send it to all of them. and the MCOs.
Because we
But I
have
need
like
specific
10 different-
addresses, and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
more you report them, the more I can report them up. and the more-
What makes it close down? If they don't have, they have like permits, like what do you need in order to open a spot that they don't have?
So the vast majority of places that are selling cannabis in this district, Brooklyn-wide really, but I'm very, in this district, the vast majority of them are unlicensed. And so their product can be seized by the sheriff's office. Or there can be a nuisance abatement through the police and courts, DA's office. The problem is, and you've probably seen this, especially in the northern end, they reopen in a few days under a new LLC.
Yes.
Now, if I could just interject in terms of order of business of this meeting, I'm gonna add, the history of OCM and licensed cannabis to the discussion in the fall. And we'll leave it there because that was a good discussion to bring us another thing. But I'm sure offline and after this meeting, we could talk a little bit more about what needs to happen, and we can include some other public safety concerns or sort of do a look back on those items in the fall.
Yeah, sorry, I'm easily led down a tangent.
Yep.
So,
We'll take final thoughts.
Oh, final thoughts?
Yep.
So
You got nervous?
No, it's gotta be good.
in my office, in the office that I serve for Congresswoman Yvette Clark, we have a strategic alliance with a lot of our gun violence, the secure violence group. It's Mod J. If
Yeah.
you need help, there's a phenomenal group called the God Squad. That's actually,
Yeah.
yeah, so, but I think this is the 70th precinct area. So I'm not sure if there is a pure violence group that covers this area.
I reach out mostly to Brownsville Think Tank Matters, AKA Drum and Al Matthew. Love that guy, and Cyrus Smith, and so those are my go-to people, but Elite Learners is also in the neighborhood. I know others turn to them, as their first call. And then, Florencia.
yeah, so
I call the person who asked the question.
lots of things that we can cover, under the umbrella of community safety for sure.
Yep. It's been captured. We will obviously, we're compiling this and we'll make sure that we act on this so that is part of the fall. But I did want to thank you all for coming out, and thank you to our new board members who showed up for the first time for this. We are gonna move to adjourning the meeting, and I just want to again thank you guys for making this time, and we'll see you guys back, well, in the fall, but also look out for communication on getting these PowerPoint slides, but also draft out the report so you guys can have confidence.
Thank you.
Huh? Really funny.